This episode was crazy. We got some pretty solid fights with Geto and Gojo, showing off how Gojo's curse technique works, but we also were introduced to Riko and Kuroi, who are both really interesting characters that I didn't expect to like nearly as much as I did. But of course, we'll break all of that down and more in today's video. So let's get started, and remember to drop a like and subscribe so that we can reach 100,000 subscribers before the end of the year. Let's get into it. As if we don't already know how cocky Geto and Gojo are this season, one of the Q soldiers, Kokun, I think is his name, tries to get out of Geto's curse, who, by the way, really wants a smooch, can't blame him, by using the excuse of becoming a rice farmer, which is pretty funny. Of course, he finally gets angry enough. He breaks his act and proclaims they have Bayer. So really, what can they do, right? They have this random guy named Bayer. Well, it turns out that, they can't do a lot because Gojo takes out Bayer, freaking takes a selfie with his unconscious body, sends it to Geto for the Q soldier to see it. These guys are straight up assholes, and I love them for it. I want 12 of them. The next scene is super important, mostly because I want to address some mistakes I made last week, but we see Toji Fushiguro and Shiyu Kong, who are part of the Star religious group, at least Shiyu Kong is. But this scene was very interesting and very important to really what's going on here, because Toji plans to use that 30 million yen to basically manipulate the Gojo family to get what he wants out of them, which Toji even says that he believes the money will be well spent on it. We also are introduced to Shiyu Kong, who is an interesting cat, as he seems to be very skeptical of Toji in many ways. This is important because he is the guy who reports back to his clientele about Toji's actions and if they're working. Seems to me, at the very least, this Toji fellow is more of a mercenary who knows his stuff and is scary when he implements an action. Funnily enough, I actually liken him to Kiritsugu Imiya from Fate, who is, if you don't know, an expert at his craft and uses his own methods to do things, which actually throws off a lot of other people as it is what they least expect him to do. So he's sort of like a wild card, much like the race he is betting on, which he does lose ultimately, which is a pretty important moment, believe it or not. However, this big part in this scene is when Shiyu Kong brings up Megumi. Yes, that Megumi, the one we all know and love. Last week I made a couple mistakes about Toji's identity and some other stuff. It just totally went over my head, honest mistake, but this actually confirmed that Toji and Megumi are related, and what's even crazier is that Toji doesn't even remember who Megumi is. So here are two questions I want to ask you guys. Why doesn't Toji remember Megumi? Is this just an added layer to his very odd personality? And two, in what way are Megumi and Toji related? Which is really what I want to know, and want to know what you guys think about. Is he like the father of Megumi, or like the brother? If that is the case, what will Megumi think of all of this? I could foresee something like Megumi maybe changing sides to Toji's and become a villain perhaps, though that does seem a little too obvious. Either way, please leave your comments down below on what you think about this revelation. Riko, the star plasma vessel, awakens in the arms of Gojo, which I imagine is an amazing feeling, knowing the person who is protecting you is Gojo and Geto, though let's be real, that should have been me. At least, I wouldn't have smacked Gojo, at the very least. Though besides, Riko's misunderstanding that they're the bad guys and nearly splitting the girl in two, phrasing. We are introduced to Riko's caretaker, the Misato Kuroi. Also, my new wife. I call dibs! She actually shows up riding Geto's curse technique, which looks freaking hilarious, but I was surprised, because Riko is different than I would have imagined, which Gojo and Geto make this observation too, that she's not exactly sad about her life ending for Master Tengen. In fact, she responds as if questioning that fact makes you a simpleton. The way she sees it, I guess, is that they are both one and the same, Riko and Tengen. In fact, she has a really mature stance on it all and seems to understand her purpose in all of this a great deal, which really surprised me. Though I think Geto and Gojo sort of don't trust her all the way. After all, this is just a kid, and the way she's speaking is very, I don't know, it's almost like she's detached from the reality of things, but on purpose, and she knows that. What about her school friends, the connections she's made, the things she likes and follows? These are all pretty awesome things that we all take for granted, But someone like her, she knows the value of these things because her life is about to end. Though, it seems Master Tengen himself is a very generous man and pretty much lets Riko have free will for the remainder of her life, just so that she can experience these things one last time. So basically, these grown men have to do what the high school girl tells them to do, which is a nice twist on this that I wasn't really expecting. You'd think there'd be more urgency here, especially seeing that she's pretty much in danger until she gets to Master Tengen. Though it seems everyone, even those at her school at the very least, is unified in making Riko's final days one that is filled with joy and one for an incredible send-off. Seeing that sort of actually made the cockles of my heart tear up a little too. Just, thinking that the realization that this young and bright lady will be sacrificing herself for some higher purpose, and there is nothing which could be done. It's really bittersweet and an amazing thing for her to do and actually take up and want to pursue. It even seems Miss Kuroi sees herself deep down as more than just a maid, but Riko's family, which is, man, that's just so super wholesome and cute, and once again, it adds to the bittersweet nature. I feel like much of Kuroi's being as a person has been defined by Riko thus far, and she probably sees her as her daughter to some degree, though she is still being tracked down with a 30 million yen bounty on her head, which Toji, Fushiguro, and 2 others take note of immediately, and boy, is the next part kinda crazy. Shiyu Kong tells Toji that the Star Plasma Vessel has not returned to Jujutsu High. This leaves Riko open to many more attacks now, and is the inherent risk of allowing such a thing to occur in general. People want her, and they want that 30 million yen, which Toji himself needs to wear down the Gojo family boy. To make matters worse, if someone else kills the vessel, then he won't get his 30 million yen and end up empty-handed. So even so, he knows Gojo will protect Riko, and so he's probably going to do the equivalent of like a third party in Apex Legends. Just let the others fight over it while he comes in and swoops up the real treasure while nobody is watching. Which, that's the way this episode seems to go, that does seem to be the case. So, as the 3 run to protect Riko, they split up and Geto runs into actually an old man who is after the bounty on Riko. He's able to use Geto's cursed technique against him, as it's so big it creates a blind spot and goes in for the kill. All the while, we get a flashback learning about the old man, which is just about as cliche as you can get and what you'd think. Either way, this old man basically was neglected by his parents over his younger, more privileged brother, but there was always one thing he could rely on, which was his dog, a Chibi, who had passed away over 50 years ago. Which, honestly, even though it is sort of cliche and we've seen this a billion times, it is kind of sad. It is kind of a sad backstory, but oh well, Geto annihilated that dude in quick fashion, so Geto was basically able to defeat him using his own weakness of trying to focus on one way of winning against him, and tries to get some info out of him afterwards. And let me tell ya, Mappa seriously needs a raise, and this wasn't even the craziest sequence I've ever seen in theory. I just hope their animators are doing well, and are hanging on by a shoestring at this point. Though we do balance out that sadness with a humor as Gojo barges into Riko's class, shouting Riko's name, which immediately causes her to panic as all of the girls ask if he's her boyfriend, which she says he's her cousin, so she's just filled with so much shame. And I love how Riko is literally the only woman in the entire universe to not want to fawn over Gojo, who, as always, by the way, takes up the limelight, giving the ladies exactly what they want in the middle of a very important mission and lesson, I assume. Even the teacher finds a way to give Gojo her number. I mean, it's pretty much at fever pitch levels in that room. Also, I like how, kind of like a stray cat, Gojo picks up Riko by her shirt and carries her that way. Though, I mean, the fun is cut short as she now has to get to the Jujutsu High before, she gets, taken out. Surprisingly, though, it's not Gojo who starts the fight with Paper Bag, but it's actually Miss Kuroi with a freaking mop. Yeah, an actual mop. She's really good, too, and is able to dodge a few blows to land a strike on Paper Bag's, unmentionables. She's also fierce, too, even going as far to threaten to kill the man as if he gets anywhere near Riko. So, I mean, so far, I really love Miss Kuroi. I really do. She's not just a helpless maid. She's Miss Kuroi, the mop-wielding badass. However, there is more than one paper bag, as there are many which attack Gojo and Rico. Gojo makes quick work in a really impressive scene from Mappa, showing just, once again, I'm beating a dead horse here. I'm just beating it to death, to a pulp. How just fluid their action is in this season by taking out two at once, by clashing them together. Turns out, however, that he's using a cloning technique, which maxes out to 5 and can change his real body at any time. So basically, if he feels like he's in danger, he'll just transfer to the other body not in the fight. It's a very good strategy in that way, seeing as his trade-off is he's actually super weak, meaning he can't summon a new body if one is destroyed, which is actually a really big crux in this whole thing. Though Gojo's technique is finally revealed, which basically is as simple as the closer you approach, the slower you slow down, and eventually never reach the target of your desire. However, as you'd guess, it does take a lot to do it, and thus, he'll get tired more easily. Thus, he is able to take out Paper Bag with relative ease. However, this all leads to Miss Kuroi being captured and used as a hostage to bring out Rico. Man, the animation and fights in this episode were solid as hell, and really, a lot better than I thought they would be animated. And in my opinion, JJK with this arc is headed to a pretty good destination so far. The threat of Toji Fushiguro is just a massive one in all of this, and I think he's clearly sitting back, watching, and planning his next move, but I really like this episode, so I want to ask you guys what your thoughts were, what's your theories on what you think is going to happen next, and as you know, I would love to see your reactions and theories, and if you haven't, become a patron, where you will gain access to my One Piece arc-by-arc review with my Arabasta arc review coming shortly, being a massive 25 pages in length. Whew, thanks for watching, bye-bye.